On today's video, we'll show you a couple of great ways on how to get from 500 to 1,000 points.
Welcome to Implausible Nature, home to competitive Black Templars gameplay.
Alright, so on today's video, we are going to step it up from our previous video where we talked about how to get started in Black Templars at 500 points. And today we are going to bump that up to 1,000. We have a couple of great lists to look at here that really do build off of the previous lists that we showed in our last video. So we're going to start off the same as before with the all Primaris Indominus box based list. So Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about this list?
All right, this is where the fun starts, boys and girls. This is where our competitive gaming juices can start to shine in our list building. 500 points is great to learn the game, get some games in, learn the new edition, learn some of the stratagems that we have available for the Black Templars, but you really can't get too deep into the real nuts and bolts of the army until you get to 1,000 points. Now you're going to be upgrading your size of your board, and also you're going to be playing some incursion missions. Fortunately, you're only going to be still using the 4 objectives, so your army lists are going to be built based on that. So this first one is going to have 1 HQ in a patrol detachment. It's a Primaris captain that is going to be utilizing the captain that you get from the Indominus. So it's going to be using the Relic Shield and the Mastercrafted Power Sword. You are also going to take 2 Assault Intercessor squads, minimum size at 5 man. Both sergeants are going to take the Power Sword to give it a little bit of oomph. You have a full-size squad of Blade Guard veterans, as you can see. That's going to be 6 man, and I'll come back to them in just a moment. You're also going to be taking the Redemptor Dreadnought. In this particular list, we're going to be taking the Plasma Incinerator as the main armament. We're also going to take the highly powerful and efficient unit of the Inceptors. This is part of the reason why we are taking the captain in this unit, to ensure that you're not blowing up your own units. Then we also have our Eradicator squad. Now, what you're all probably asking is, why did you take those units? So first off, as Alex mentioned, we are building off of the 500 points, but I did mention in that video that we are not necessarily using the same units in these units. We're building off of the list using the core that you have, but we're not going to use units that are bad or not competitive in those lists. So these are all useful choices for you, as you're building towards a larger collection. So with that being said, troops are going to be important at this points level, but not necessarily at 2,000 points. So Assault Intercessors are really important to make sure that you're able to go across the board and capture some objectives with those objectives secured. Because they're a 5-man squad, they're not going to be able to knock over a little bit more dedicated things. They can put some good wounds on stuff, but you're really going to want that Power Sword to be able to really deal with mech and armor to be able to do that damage. As I mentioned, we have the Primaris captain. Now, ideally, he's going to be close by to your Blade Guard veteran squad. However, it is a 6-man squad, which is going to be susceptible to blast. So if necessary, and probably most of the time, you're going to be combat squatting that unit into 2 separate 3-man units so that they can push into the separate portions of the board, so that you can get things like engage on all fronts or threaten an opponent's objectives. When you split those units, you're going to make it harder to buff them. So the captain, with his aura of reroll 1s, is going to be able to, hopefully, if they're within range, get both of those units buffed, as well as extend to the Inceptor squad, who should be sticking very close to that captain so that they are not going to blow themselves up with those 1s. Get those rerolls to keep them around, because it is only a 3-man squad. In a larger list, you would take more, obviously. But at 1,000 points, 3-man squad shooting those plasma exterminators is going to be really deadly to your opponent. You can also, if you want, keep your Eradicator squad really close by to that captain as well to get rerolls on those Melta. But ideally, you're probably going to be using them to sit on your home objective because they have a 24-inch range on the Melta and still be perfectly effective against any of the armor or heavy units that you have on the ground that your opponent has. So you have 2 to 3 shooting units here because you can't forget the Redemptor. That plasma incinerator is obviously more geared towards marine equivalent units or higher with like Death Guard or Gravis to be able to deal with that, because those are going to be units that are at this point, at this level of points, going to be kind of difficult for you to deal with without something dedicated towards that. I feel that you can deal with hordes with your troops here as well as your veterans just fine. The captain himself is going to be able to deal with alternative opponent characters. He can use them as a countercharge unit, and all around is a very balanced list for Primaris only. So with this list, you have 2 objectives secured, 3 essential shooting. One of those can be almost counted as a close combat unit, and then you have 1 dedicated close combat unit, and then your assault intercessor squads who also can fulfill that role if necessary.
Yeah, this is a great list. I like it. It has a lot of the elements that fit our play style, those Blade Guard, the Assault Intercessors, like you said, but also still has some firepower and some fast-moving firepower, which is great. One thing I noticed, Bob, is the inclusion of a captain instead of a chaplain, like we did in the 500-point list. Tell me a little bit about that decision to go with a captain over the chaplain.
So that's a good point. Yeah, that's one of those big changes in the list, building off of that 500-point list. So as I mentioned in just a moment ago, is you want the captain to give that aura to multiple different units. Now with the chaplain, typically our litanies are going to be solo units, such as a Litany of Divine Protection. That's going to target one specific unit, as well as like Fires of Devotion, or maybe even Exhortation of Rage. Yes, we do have access to some aura litanies, but this style list benefits better from having that aura reroll 1 rather than a single target litany. Now, if we were taking something like Terminators or Vanguard Veterans, then the Chaplain would be a better choice, where you can make good use of that Litany of Divine Protection or Fires of Devotion on that larger, more durable squad. But because we are solo picking on our Primaris here, those weren't options. And most likely, the biggest unit that we were going to be taking and would potentially be buffing with those litanies is going to be the Blade Guard Veteran Squad. But we're probably going to be combat squadding them in most games to split them across the board. So you just want to make sure that you have something reasonable to buff with the Chaplain. And if you don't, maybe a aura would be better off.
All right, great. So to take a look at the cost analysis for this, like we did in our previous video, if you bought Indomitus, so you already own that box set, or at least the models in it from the 500 points that we did, you would need an additional Blade Guard Veteran box here, which comes in at $50, a Redemptor Dreadnought at $65, the Inceptor box, so you just need the 3, which is great, so it's just $50. So it's just in a total an additional $165 to get from 500 to 1,000 points with this list if you already have Indomitus. Now, if you didn't buy Indomitus, then the total cost you can see here, you're going to have to buy a Primaris Captain, a box of Assault Intercessors, and then again, the Blade Guard, Redemptor, and Inceptors, and then you also have to add the Eradicators in there as well, bringing the total to $365 retail. Now, there is another option for you that if you are on a budget, something that you can do to bring down the cost a little bit for you is instead buy the Dark Angels Combat Patrol Box. This includes a Redemptor, a 5-man Intercessor Squad, the 3-man Inceptor Squad, and a Chaplain. You can then buy in 5 Indominus Assault Intercessors off of eBay. They're running about $15 to $20 for 5 of them right now, so you can get them pretty cheaply there. And then the 2 Blade Guard Veteran boxes and Eradicators box That'll save you about $55, $50 to $60, bringing the total down to about $310. So a great way to save a little bit there. It would slightly tweak the list. Obviously, you'd go for a chaplain over a captain and regular intercessors over one of the assault intercessors. So if we did that, Bob, any suggestions that you've had for playing that list a little differently with those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. You're still going to want to be aggressive with the list, as you can kind of tell by the list itself. One of the things that you're not going to be able to do, as just mentioned with the Inceptors, you're not going to be able to provide those reroll ones. So you do have a little bit more option to freely move those around the board, utilizing their full speed to get to those juicy targets across the board, potentially into your opponent's deployment zone, getting those engaged on all fronts, or potentially take over that objective. But with the chaplain there, with those litanies, you're probably going to want to take divine protection with that, and you're going to be more apt to keep your Blade Guard veteran squad together instead of combat squatting them. So that way they can take the most benefit from the 5++ feel no pain roll, as well as gaining the benefits of the Litany of Hate there. So those are going to be just charging right up towards your opponent, taking on their most dangerous units, and having that buff from the chaplain there. Now, with the chaplain, he's more focused on buffing a single unit, whereas the captain is trying to buff as many things as possible in that. So you're just kind of want to see what you're going to want to do with the list itself as far as that goes. The assault intercessors, the main one, will be able to still advance on and provide some assault benefit to you, and then you can hold back the intercessor squad to kind of hold your objectives, as well as providing some incidental shooting as well. So both are acceptable routes to go. I prefer the first one, obviously, because that's the list here. But you can still make that change if you want to save a decent amount of money and still do well with the list.
Yeah, and it's not like those units won't be useful down the road for you either. All right, so moving on to our next list. As before, this is a mix of Firstborn and Primaris Marines. This is sort of a list that basically, if you have access to everything, or you don't have a budget, you can just buy whatever you need, then this is a list designed around just anything that we want to take from the Codex. So why don't you tell us about this list?
Okay, of the two lists, this is my more favorite list, and I guess I'm a little bit biased because this is how I would personally start building a list into a larger collection. So this is probably the more competitive of the two. It starts with a captain on a bike with a Teeth of Terra relic. So you'll want to make sure that he is up front as a counter strike unit, buffing the items in the list. You'll notice, as before, there is a captain versus the chaplain that we had in the previous list here. That does not mean the chaplain is not useful to the list. Chaplain Grimaldus is in many 2,000 point lists, but in this particular case, we are getting to that points level where certain things need to be taken, and you need to make sure that you're buffing them correctly. With the troop squad, we're taking infiltrator squads, so this is going to be a more common troop at the 2,000 points list. You can still take some of the other ones, but I think this is a good segue into building into the troops that you're going to be taking at the 2,000 points. Now, infiltrator squads give you some great benefits even at this small points level, in that they can block deep strike units coming into your back line, or potentially on a mid board objective with their ability to block the 12 inches of deep striking. They're also concealed position, so they can get in advanced objectives that you would not normally be able to get to, potentially. And they have the Helix Gauntlet, so they ignore the first failed armor save. You can combo that with Transhuman and Smokescreen to give yourself a very durable unit. However, you're going to be burning some CP to do that, But if it comes down to it and you really want to protect the unit on an objective at 1,000 points, that's going to be pretty tough to knock off. You know, as mentioned in several different videos, we want the 3 tenets, and one of those tenets is going to be durability, and that is a unit that can be very durable for you, that's objective secured, that your opponent will struggle to take out at this point. Moving on to our elites, we have a 5-man assault Terminator squad fielding the Thunderhammers and Storm Shields. This is the beginning of the larger squad that you normally see at 2,000 points that gets buffed by the Apothecary. Now, at 1,000 points, you're not going to be able to afford the extra Apothecary to give those 6+ Feel No Pain and that revive. However, they're still difficult to deal with at 1,000 points, even at a 5-man squad. So what is technically a 1+ save and a 4+ invulnerable save with the 3 wounds is going to be very, very tough for your opponent to deal with on the board, especially when you combo them with the next unit of a full Vanguard veteran squad. This is the full kit. All of them have storm shields with the variety of different weaponry there. You're going to be taking the Relic Blade on the Sergeant, 3 Thunderhammers, 3 Lightning Claws, and 3 Astartes Chainswords to give you a variety of attacks. It can deal with any type of unit, vehicle, monsters, horde, or elite infantry, and it is super durable and fast. That is the unit that is going to be attacking your flanks or your opponent's flanks, getting those side objectives that are harder to get due to their high speed, and will likely be escorted by your captain, who is going to give them rerolls to 1. So that is going to be a huge threat to your opponent across the board, while you also have your Terminator Assault Squad just marching down the center of the board. And while you still have your infiltrators on an objective, likely. Next, you follow up with your attack bikes. So I talked about how amazing even a single multi-melt attack bike is in the 500 point list. Now you have 2 of them. So you're getting twice as much shots for still a very efficient 110 points that are fast, can get anywhere on the board that you need. They're not going to put out as much damage as an Eradicator squad, which is only 25 points more, but you get that additional mobility with these guys, and they're just great all-around units. Can speed across the board real quickly wherever you need it. Can still have that range wherever you feel like you're necessary. You do have to worry about getting across ruins, but as a 2-man squad, it's not going to be that hard to maneuver around whatever you need to and get the shots that you need. Great all-around unit for 110 points. And then finally, you have your heavy support Devastator squad, which is the grav cannons. It's going to be the same unit as you took in the 500 points. Devastating unit against Marines, Death Guard, and even some Horde lists. So they still do a ton of damage with that -3 AP, not even counting our doctrines. So that's going to rip apart anything that comes close to your home objectives. You can stick it there. So this list has a ton of threats that really, honestly, you don't really want to face any of them, and you have to deal with everything all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to build off of the sort of niche Vanguard veteran list that I showed in the last video, you can certainly do that because it includes this unit, which is great. This is the, as you said, the full kit Vanguard Vet Squad, that the loadout that Bob and I prefer to run. And you mentioned that the grav cannons are even good against hordes. Keep in mind they're strength 5. They're going to wound most horde things on 3s, punch through whatever armor they likely have with AP -3, and they don't have a 3+ save. That's fine. Most of them are only 1 wound anyway, so not having 2 damage is not going to affect you with that. So really, really great. Now, as far as purchasing this list, this is definitely coming in with our most expensive list here. You can see the total $417. So to go through these units here, the Captain on a bike This one is a challenge. I guess you're going to have to buy the Con on a bike direct from GW on this. Or if you have a bike laying around and some legs for it, you can kit bash one together with torso and some firstborn weapons. So not really a lot of options. Literally the only reason that I think this datasheet is not Legends is because GW still sells that model, which is a little strange to me that there's not like a more generic one that it's very specific to white scars. In any case, so a little tricky on the Captain on a bike, maybe a little harder to acquire exactly what you're looking for. You'll have to do a little bit of kit bashing with that guy. Infiltrators, a box of them is 60. They come 10 to a box, so you can build your 5 infiltrators. I would probably recommend building the other 5 as incursors, just so you can run both. You're not going to run more than one squad of infiltrators, more than likely, and having a 5-man squad of incursors who are much cheaper for larger games could be handy. Something to note: Helix Gauntlet is not in the multi-part kit. It is only on the easy to build kit from the Start Collecting Vanguard box. So you'll either have to kit bash it or just say the comms guy use those bits and make him look more like an apothecary, or find someone who doesn't want that piece and or buy them off of eBay. Is going to be your best bet for that. Obviously, then the Termies, you'll need 2 Vanguard boxes again, same as last time. 2 attack bikes, 2 Devastator squad boxes, because you only do get those 2 grav cannons in each box. So you'll need to get 2 of them to have a full loadout of 4, which brings us to our total of $417 for this. So, but as we've stated, all of these units are going to serve you well. We're not recommending anything that is only going to be useful in the smaller points games that you wouldn't run in a larger point game. So yeah, it can get expensive, but just keep in mind that this is also investing in the future. Once you get up to 2,000 points, you're going to keep using these units over and over and over again, and you'll be able to use them for a long time, which is great.
As Alex mentioned, this is how we are personally feeling that we would build up a competitive list from scratch. Now, there were some comments from a few members of our Discord and how they got a new viewpoint on how to build a list from this series, and that's a good point. And I kind of want to talk just briefly about that. Is you know, a lot of people join the army and they see a 2,000 point list and they aspire to just build that list and play with that list. That's okay for some people, but ultimately, most people are gradually building their lists up from scratch, while they paint it, getting some games in, learning the army. And really, this is what that is for. It is even good for those existing members out there that are having existing armies that they can pull some of these things together, build and play some smaller escalation sized games. Get used to the army and how it plays in ninth edition. Get used to some of those stratagems, how the unit interacts with different armies and against different armies. Build up to the next stage. So you're using the competitive units that we would use at a larger scale and then build from scratch. Each points level will play differently, so that's going to be important as well. Each opponent's list is going to play differently, and it's going to teach you how the Black Templars play in general in different ways and how the units are going to be successful against differing opponents, and will just give you a better viewpoint on how even larger games will play. So when you get directly into a 2,000 point army, if you don't have that experience, you may not do as well. So this is a great way of kind of taking that to the next level, especially for returning players.
So that about wraps it up for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button and make sure you click the bell icon to get notified on all of our latest content. We have a Patreon and we greatly appreciate their support. So if you'd like to get some exclusive content or you'd just like to support the channel, we really appreciate it. Also, be sure to check out our Discord. We have an active community of players on there where you can get lots of help or discussion on all things Black Templars. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.